Alright guys, in order to install this quarter panel, only 2 more issues need to be solved.
So it's not gonna be easy, it's gonna be really hard.
With our fingers crossed, we're about to solve one of those issues. You excited? I'm excited. Let's jump into it. Real quick, added some new artwork on the wall. Shout out to Maddie Barrier, she's awesome. And I also added this little gem over here. I love it so much. So most of you know that the last remaining piece of the puzzle was the alignment of the quarter panel to the door. This quarter panel was sitting a wee bit high, and I messed around with the door. So in trying to solve this, I messed around with the door and I actually raised it up, and in doing this and moving it around, I realized that the door would not close because of the positioning of the striker. The latch hits the striker, but it is just far enough forward that it won't latch. My first reaction was to freak out because I had the B-pillar off. I welded it in place to measurements that I thought were correct, and of course naturally I assumed that I put the B-pillar in the wrong place. And so long story short, I went live. And I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out with me. And Barry pointed out from Joe Daddy's Garage, hey, just make a shim and move the striker forward. And me, still being new to a lot of this, didn't even realize that was an option. So that is what we're about to do. Hopefully that solves the closing issue, and then we're going to address the alignment height of the door and quarter panel. Here's the dealio. I picked up a piece of 16 gauge steel. We're gonna use that to make a shim for the striker. So I knew I needed about a 5/8 inch by 5/8 inch, whatever. I knew I had to cut out a section here in order for this to fit down. So I just made a cutout for this to fit into. And at that point it should be pretty straightforward. I just need to drill out my holes and cut out around and we should be good to go. We have it on there, and at this point it's very crude. It still needs to be cleaned up and shaped. So this is 16 gauge steel. I'm going to have to put some kind of scoring on the back of this plate, the shim I made, so that it grips on there good. This striker obviously has those like little knob grippy things on the back of it, so we'll have to do something to the back of this to make sure it grips in there and it doesn't move around over time. But I can figure that out later. That's for another day. Much gooder. Yeah, that's fantastic. And the gap is pretty darn good. So as far as the door, it is lined up about with this rocker panel, which it should be. So that problem is solved. The only thing left to solve now is this alignment. And when you look at it, you're like, oh, well, you actually have it fixed. It's aligned properly, and you would be right. But I raised the door to fix it. And when you look at how close the door is to the drip molding, the door, I believe, is just too high. It doesn't hit it now, but when the trim is on there, it's gonna hit it. So just to give you guys some reference, there's the gap on the donor car from the drip rail to the top of the door. And you can see that the gap is almost non-existent. It's like a 1/16 of an inch. And the gap on the donor car is closer to a quarter at least. Let's see that one more time. Oh yeah. Okay, I'm messing around with this a little bit more. I have the bottom of the quarter detached. Normally it's screwed into the B-pillar over here and then into the wheelhouse over here. But as I'm messing with this, look how the quarter panel right here easily goes in. Right into where it wants to be, where it needs to be, okay? It isn't until right in here that the issue happens. And I talked about this before, and I really think it's just a matter of grinding off some of this material and grinding off some of that material, and that might be enough to fix it. I don't know, I gotta look at this. All right, moment of truth. Well, oh, it slides on easier. And it is a little lower where those holes line up. I think that worked. Yeah, I believe that worked. All right, I believe we're in business. That is much better than it was. In fact, you can see that this dropped down just a little bit more than where it was, which means I can now drop the door down a little bit and correct for some of this gap, and we should be good. I'm assuming, yeah. I think this quarter panel fitment's a done deal. I am about ready to rock and roll. I just got to weld in the brace that the quarter window attaches to. Oh, and I gotta test. You know, throughout this entire project, there hasn't really been anything that bothers me or that I've put off really, except for that quarter window. I don't know what it is, but I do not want to be bothered with it. I don't want to install it. I don't want to test fit it. I just want it to go away. That being said, I think that's what I have to do next. I just noticed now that all this alignment is taken care of, this little dip that I was so worried about does not look nearly as bad. So, yes! Awesome! But yeah, I think the quarter panel is ready to be welded in. As soon as I test fit the quarter window and make sure everything's good with that, we should be ready to do this and make it a done deal. Alright, so it's the next night, and as you guys can see, I finally decided to tackle the quarter window. It is not finished, but I do have it rough fit in there. I will note on this bracket, there are 2 bolts that go down through there into the rocker, and on this side, the little square clip that the bolt threads into pushed out, and now the bolt and the clip are basically locked together, and I can't get it out. So that's really frustrating. Not sure how I'm gonna fix it. Might even just leave it like that. Maybe that's a terrible idea. I don't know. It seems to be in there pretty good. By all means, SOS. Throw help in the comments. That would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, it's not complete, but it is far enough along that I could probably clean this up and weld it in and be done with this part if I wanted to, and we could move on with the quarter installation. So I've got some decisions to make. Obviously, I'm leaning towards getting the quarter installed, but it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to make sure this is all hunky-dory before I weld in that quarter, because now would be the time to fix any issues. We'll see what I get done and where we end up on Friday's episode. So until then, stay driven.